wages have stagnated for so long now that if workers don't strike, they're actually not going to be able to afford to live. I think the Labour Party has to be out on picket lines. It's the Labour Party that was funded by, some trade unions. They got together and decided to have a voice in Westminster to, amplify the concerns and, the demands of working class people. So the Labour Party has to be here. It's not a question of whether it's a good idea or not to be here. Like, this is the foundation of what our party is supposed to be about.
But they want to be the party in government, so if you strike, you can't be in government.
I mean, it's quite a ridiculous concept, isn't it, that working class people demanding better paying conditions and going out on strike. And also, it's not just that we just wake up one day and say, I'm going to go on strike. Like, this is an end of a negotiation process that has failed, so it's a last resort for workers to go out on strike. So the suggestion that it's somehow like a knee-jerk reaction and not a series of very intense negotiations from talented and skilled trade unionists trying to get better things, like that's playing politics at the end of the day. So the suggestion somehow that it's not a kind of government ready party that supports working class people organising together in their constituencies with their reps to demand better, that's what our politicians should be doing. It's the same practice.
Do you think that maybe they might have made a mistake at the beginning and thought it was just going to be the train drivers?
I think there's a possibility that they tried to make a calculated decision that a militant union like the RMT was going out on strike, and maybe the Labour Party was worried about being associated with what we would consider to be like quite a radical trade union, and now, as you can see, you've got workers who are going out on strike pretty much every week, and I expect that to happen again and again. Like I said, you've got BT out next week, we've got RATP drivers part of the Unite bus network that are going to be going out as well. This isn't going to end anytime soon, so if the Labour Party has decided to really make its bed in not supporting those working class people, I don't see how they expect those same people to vote for the Labour Party in the next general election.
Well, especially as there aren't many policies to tackle the cost of living crisis. I know that it was their windfall tax idea to start with, but apart from that, we haven't really heard much else.
Exactly, and that's the problem, is that when you've got silence, and that silence is also compounded with the fact that the Labour Party is telling its shadow cabinet members and its MPs that they shouldn't be going out on picket lines, it's kind of adding insult to injury, right? Which is basically saying, not only we're not going to help you, we're also not even going to be bothering to go out and support you when it's you who's advocating for better change for your conditions. I mean, we should all support strikes because at the end of the day, we're facing a cost of living crisis, which is possibly the worst of a generation. Obviously, we've seen today that the energy price cap has gone up to like an astronomical amount of money. And it's getting to the point where it's not just like, post people that are out on strike. We're looking at bus drivers out with Unite as well. You've got BT going out on strike next week. And this isn't about specific disputes in different workplaces. This is about working class people coming together and saying that enough is enough. And it's actually getting to the point where wages have stagnated for so long now that if workers don't strike, they're actually not going to be able to afford to live anymore. And that's why it's so important that workers get together, get active in trade unions and, ask for a cost of living pay rise. It's not just about, individual groups of workers who are challenging specific terms and conditions in their contracts. This is about working class people together saying that they need to be paid an amount of money that makes it, possible to live in this country. And what we're seeing at the moment is actually most workers are in work poverty, which means they can't afford to pay their bills, but they're going out to work every day. And I think most trade unions are basically just saying that in a simple way, people shouldn't have to live like that.
You're a Labour councillor.
I am.
What does it look like in your area?
For the City of London, we've got quite an interesting mix of people. You've got some of the most kind of highly paid individuals living in my constituency, but I've also got a council estate across the road where people are struggling to pay their energy bills as they are right now. In my council at the moment, the City of London Corporation, I've got Unite and GMB potentially balloting for strike action because we saw some research out last week that said those council workers are actually having to use food banks because they're not getting paid enough.
Council
workers, using food banks. And the kind of sad thing about that is that they might live outside of the council, so they're relying on council-funded food banks in other areas of London to be able to supplement the fact that they're not getting paid enough by a different local authority. It's just crazy.
Is anyone not using food banks at the moment?
Well, one of the saddest things at the moment that I saw the other day is that food banks are basically saying that because people are getting so much poorer, people can't afford to donate to food banks, which means that more people are using food banks but less people are donating to them. So it's even worse than it was maybe a year ago for people using food banks. And this is the saddest thing, is that people in work should not be using food banks. I don't think anybody should be using food banks, but I really don't think people who are paid to go to work should be then using that money to pay for a massive energy bill and then having to rely on charity to feed themselves and feed their families.
Why aren't Labour here today?
I don't know. This is Rushanara Ali's constituency. I would hope that she would be here. As you can see, she's not.